Saudi Arabia. You see, what we end up with is this situation. We go, oh, Mr. Trump. We can all do that. Believe me, I can riff on Trump
again, you're being
all
quite
day.
selective, aren't you?
What are you going to do about the people you can't do anything about? Are you going to ignore them? Are you going to give them a pass? Or are you just going to enjoy beating up on the democracy?
I hate to have to interrupt you. There's something called democracy, though, isn't there? Elections.
For sure.
Mark, quickly before I go to another question.
No. We can go to another question.
Okay, let's go to another question, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is very briefly addressed to all of you. We have been talking about the role of developed countries, but how about our role? How about sustainable development? I mean, what comes after education? How do we develop those countries that we get out from after we get the education? Why don't we have goals set for what do I have to do to make my country developed? How do I make my country self-reliant? I mean, we've been talking about the role of developed countries. Why not talk about the role of developing countries? Thank you so much.
I think they are in. There's a dynamic relationship between those two things. And that's why I thought the previous question was important. While I agree with you, there's no silver bullet. There's no single answer to any of this. I think it would be hard to imagine any free African nation without imagining the role of structural adjustment policy, debt repayment in particular ways that it undermines its ability to self-sustain and to self-govern. So as I think about, in your question, the idea that we need to provide a self-sustaining Qatar or a self-sustaining Uganda, I mean, pick a place, right? Tanzania. We have to understand the role of the West in undermining that. Otherwise, we end up with a narrative like, why don't you people just clean yourselves up and pick yourself up by the bootstraps and self-govern? And I think it's a much more challenging and daunting task than that.
Another question, please. Thank you.
So I'm going to talk briefly about, my mother's experience as an immigrant, and I want to touch here on something that Mark Lamont Hill said, this power of education and telling people how refugees fit into the wider context of economic development. Here's why I'm very skeptical about that. Because when my mother arrived in the UK and her parents arrived in the UK, people still called them dirty packies. When she had graduated from Oxford University, she was still a brown person who was not seen as a citizen, right? So to what extent can we really sell this idea that being educated or fitting X, Y, and Z criteria is what you need to do as a refugee for people to humanize you? The inherent problem with these people is that they don't humanize you. You can't fulfill your oppressor's criteria so that they see you as human. So how do you humanize people?
Dehumanizing refugees, thank you very much. And with this, let me go to you, Douglas Murray. Because much of your argument, Douglas, seems to be about the us versus them, the fact that, we have our own values, our own Britishness, our own virtues, and they will come to our shores with their values, their traditions. You seem to almost suggest that they come to your countries with a lesser breed of values.
No, I don't think I said that at any point, and that's another time you've tried to put something in my mouth.
So when you talk about the difference in values, what do you suggest?
Look, first of all, I didn't say that. I said that there are challenges because we do know that there are challenges, and let's just be frank about this. I mean, for instance, I've been in the Gulf for the last week or so. I see more burqas in my home city of London than I have seen in the Gulf in recent days, certainly here in Doha. Now, I can't say I'm delighted by the sight of more and more burqas in London. Do I feel any hatred of the people who wear them? Of course not. Of course not. But I can't say I'm elated by it. And definitely there are times I think, what percentage of burqas in this area becomes like not that pleasant for everyone else.
But again, is it all down to burqas? Because again, you're not asking people with other traditions whether they care about the sight of people drinking alcohol or showing up in bikinis. Again, it's a very
we could in Britain
Western-centric viewpoint.
I'm not. I have to say, you're going to bark up the wrong tree if you think you're going to persuade a Brit that we should stop drinking alcohol because of people arriving in our country. I mean, that's not going to happen. These things are all a bit of give and take.
You bring your own traditions that don't quite fit with theirs.
Well,
they don't.
Yeah, there are, as I said, and before we got all confrontational, which you did from the get-go, I said what the problem is here is that these things are all rubbing against each other. And in that situation, you have to work out what things you're willing to give up, which things you're willing to compromise on, and which ones you're not. You're not going to persuade the Brits to massively change their culture, but let me just make the point. Every single society has certain aspects of it doesn't want to give up. This one will. In Qatar, this one will. Everyone does. So please don't try to make this a kind of bigoted European thing.
Which of your
very,
most
very
afraid
dishonest
to
way to.
lose?
That would be a very dishonest
I
way
think
to
the
Just
represent
answer this question
debate.
directly if you can. Which of your values are you most afraid to lose? Which ones are most threatened by
Freedom
the
of
arrival
speech.
of refugees?
Freedom of speech. It's the first one. Oh, you think that's not a problem?
I mean,
You think that's not a problem?
But
you
I'll
think?
let you
Sorry,
take it
no,
on.
no, no. Let
No,
me
it's absolutely- I
let
think
me
it's-
pick up on that. Let me pick up on that. It's
What about the
very
values of
easy to
tolerance, the
snigger.
values
It's
of-
very easy to snigger about this until you've had friends shot in a newspaper office. It's very easy to laugh about that until it's happened to people you know.
Right, but could